Hello and welcome back to another Magic the Gathering EDH deck tech idea. Today we are taking a look at Muxus, Goblin Grandee. It is a 6 mana 4/4 and when it enters the battlefield, reveal the top 6 cards of your library. Put all goblin creature cards with converted mana cost 5 or less from among them onto the battlefield and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Whenever Muxus attacks, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each other goblin you control. Muxus is a really funny alternative to playing Krenko the mob boss, as he randomizes the outcome of his ETB trigger, but can still be a really explosive commander. Due to the fact that Muxus costs 6 mana, we need to bring him out as fast as possible, and due to the fact that we are playing a mono red deck that also plays a lot of cheap creatures, we can work with a lot of different spells. For example, Battle Him, a 2 mana instant, add 1 red mana to your mana pool for each creature you control. As I have just said, this card is great in a goblin deck, because you will flood the board with a bunch of cheap creatures in the early game and will be able to accelerate into Muxus really early with this card. You also play Seething Song, a 3 mana instant that adds you 5 red mana. You also play Rider Flame, a 1 mana sorcery, add 1 red to your mana pool, then add 1 red to your mana pool for each card named Rider Flame in each graveyard. We also use our goblins as a mana resource with Skirk Prospector, a 1 mana 1/1, and we can sacrifice a goblin to add 1 red mana. Remember that he can also sacrifice himself to his ability, so depending on the turn he replaces himself. We play Pyretic Ritual, a 2 mana instant to add 3 red mana, and we also play Brightstone Ritual, a 1 mana instant, add 1 red mana to your mana pool for each goblin in play. Definitely keep in mind that this also counts for your opponent's goblins, so maybe you're lucky in one matchup to also benefit from your opponent's goblins. Once we get Muxus ETB trigger, we want to hit a few of the following cards. For example, Goblin King, a 3 mana 2/2, and other goblin creatures get +1/+1 and have Mountain Walk. This means that they are unblockable as long as the defending player controls a mountain. We also wanna hit Hobgoblin Bandit Lord, a 3 mana 2/3, and other goblins you control get +1/+1. And we can also pay 1 red mana, tap him, so Goblin Bandit Lord deals damage equal to the number of goblins that entered the battlefield under your control this turn to any target. This can be extremely explosive with Muxus, or if you manage to pull a Krenko mob boss activation off. A cool anthem effect is Bloodmark Mentor, a 2 mana 1/1, and red creatures you control have first strike. When it comes to enabling haste, we wanna hit Goblin Warchief, a 3 mana 2/2, and goblin spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, and goblins you control have haste. We also play Goblin Chieftain, a 3 mana 2/2 that by itself has haste, and other goblin creatures you control get +1/+1 and have haste. Another great anthem effect and sacrifice outlet is Goblin Trashmaster, a 4 mana 3/3, and other goblins you control get +1/+1. At instant speed you can sacrifice a goblin to destroy target artifact, which means that you can get rid of one nasty artifact on the battlefield by sacrificing one simple goblin. When it comes to instant speed sacrifice outlets, we also play Parshalik Mons, a 3 mana 2/2, and whenever it or another goblin you control dies, it deals 1 damage to any target. It also has an activated ability for 4 mana, and sacrificing a goblin you can create 2 1/1 red goblin creature tokens. We also play Siege Gang Commander, a 5 mana 2/2, and when it enters the battlefield, create 3 1/1 red goblin creature tokens. You can pay 2 mana and sacrifice a goblin, so it deals 2 damage to any target. Another really powerful card in this deck is Siege Gang Lieutenant, a 4 mana 2/2 with Lieutenant, so at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control your commander, create 2 1/1 red goblin creature tokens. Those tokens gain haste until end of turn. For 2 generic mana and sacrificing a goblin, it deals 1 damage to any target. And when it comes to having a sacrifice outlet, we also play Goblin Bombardment, a 2 mana enchantment, sacrifice a creature, Goblin Bombardment deals 1 damage to any target. And now let's talk about a few final Overrun effects. For example, Kindred Charge, a 6 mana sorcery, choose a creature type. For each creature you control of the chosen type, create a token that's a copy of that creature. Those tokens gain haste. Exile them at the beginning of the next end step. Most preferably you will create another copy of Muxus, which of course will die to the legendary rule, but you will still get the ETB trigger, so you might cheat out a few more goblins. We also play Coat of Arms, a 5 mana artifact, and each creature gets +1/+1 for each other creature on the battlefield that shares at least one creature type with it. so even all of your small goblins will become huge with this artifact. And we play Shared Animosity, a 3 mana enchantment. Whenever a creature you control attacks, it gets +1/+0 until end of turn for each other attacking creature that shares a creature type with it. Another powerful combo that you can pull off in this deck comes with the following cards. First of all, you will need Mana Echoes, a 4 mana enchantment. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield, you may add an amount of colorless mana equal to the number of creatures you control that share a creature type with it. This card is extremely explosive with Kranko Mob Boss, a 4 mana 3/3, and you can tap in to create X 1/1 red goblin creature tokens, where X is the number of goblins you control. Being able to resolve a Kranko activation will give you a bunch of goblins depending on your board state, which will end in a bunch of colorless mana, which you will then use to cast the following spell: Crackle with Power, a 2 red and 3 X sorcery, and Crackle with Power deals 5 times X damage to each up to X targets. One of our themes is definitely by winning with combat damage with all of our goblins, but having an alternative win con definitely helps. And furthermore, Mana Echoes is also a great mana advantage to have extremely powerful turns. You want to win more? You get it. Another great card that you want to play in this deck is Conjurer's Closet, a 5 mana artifact. At the beginning of your end step, you may exile target creature you control. Then return that card to the battlefield under your control. This card will most likely always flicker Muxus, so you can get through your deck to cheat out all of your Anthem goblins to win in the next turn, but I can definitely recommend to only play this artifact when you have an instant speed sacrifice outlet on the battlefield, as this triggers in your end step and you will have to wait until your next turn to pull the final turn off. And if there is a board wipe incoming, you should be able to at least profit from all of those goblins that would die anyways. Alright guys, these were a few cards that I would play in Muxus, Goblin Grandee. Make sure to check out my deck list in the description below. Let me know down in the comments which cards you would add to the deck, which legendary creature I shall feature next, and then I would say, see you in the next one. Goodbye guys.